Hello, I'm Chris Moyles. Thanks for joining us. We are in the beautiful Air Studios, legendary recording facility in London, and I'm sitting with 2/3 of the band Muse. I've written a funny intro. You're going to like this. Ready? Matt Bellamy, lead vocals, guitar, piano, keyboards. Dominic Howard, drums.
Must try harder.
When you split the money up that comes in, do you get a bit more? Because on paper, it sounds like you do more work.
Yeah, I don't get paid more for that work actually. Yeah. This year we split everything equally regarding the recordings and the live.
Wow.
But I do write the songs, so I get a little bit of a,
So you do really well. I mean, no, I love drums, but
Not bad for a drummer, yeah. Did pretty well.
But I was doing a lot of research on you, and I was watching a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and I was watching you in the studio with the full orchestras and all of that.
Yeah, we're very good at blowing cash, basically. That's what we're experts at that, both live and in the studio.
But what do you go to those sessions? There's no drums on some of these bits.
I do actually. I did miss the last string session, but no. When we, we've produced two albums.
That's the only string session you've ever missed, though, isn't it? Yeah.
It is actually, because I'm always here, but I couldn't make it. But we've produced two albums by ourselves and co-produced all the time, and we're all like really involved with every single detail. Normally, everything that gets recorded,
right,
decision-making process, and everything to do with it. So I'm around, believe it or not.
When you do that. I was watching. I'm gonna go back. I want to start at the beginning and talk about that. But just as we're talking about the orchestral stuff, one of, if not my favourite Muse track, is "United States of Erasure."
Good choice. I like
the band Erasure.
It's a rare choice.
That. Well, but
it should have been United States of Erasure.
It should have been.
The disco version.
And I absolutely love it. I love the orchestral. For me, it's perfection, and I genuinely mean that. I really love it. And I watched a video of you in the studio with the orchestra and doing all the strings and everything, and it's great. But do you sit there and look at each other afterwards and go, "That oboe sounds out. That oboe, that French horn's wrong, isn't it? That needs to come down."
All the time, yeah. We're perfectionists. I mean, yeah, I can hear the tuning of every reed instrument of every violin player. Yeah, well, the string session we did the other day, there was one or two violin players that just weren't quite in tune. I mean, yeah, and so I had to have
you cracked the whip.
I had to have a word with the conductor and say, just ask them to just step up.
Do you not burst into the studio going, "Come on"?
Yeah, I do that, but in a quieter version of that. You know, I'm more the silent, deadly type in the studio.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about the beginning of Muse, and I know you've told this in many interviews and stuff, but you two met early on when you were teenagers.
Yeah, probably when we were like 12.
No, really? I thought it was like 13.
13, something like that.
Well, no, we knew of each other from the age of 11. No, we went to the same infant school together. So
yeah.
we
probably met when we were like
we probably
4
like
or 5.
banged into each other or whatever, or
Yeah.
like through conkers at each other
Played
when we were about
it
5 or 6 or
like
something.
that, yeah.
But we didn't actually become mates until like say 13 or something, 12, 13.
And we were just at school, the same kind of high school. And I had a band with a few of my mates, and we were just looking for another guitarist because that guy just, I guess, wasn't really into it or something like that. And I knew of Matt being a good musician because he'd done a few like school performances playing some guitar and piano and stuff like that, and knew he played the guitar. And then
What had you played in this?
Well, so basically at that point, I was like extremely far. Well, I'm not trying to say I'm cool now, but then I was extremely far from cool. You know, I was I'd wear shell suits. I was kind of into like, you know, like
they were a thing though.
I was into like
there was a time.
I guess I was into like, pop and rap music and stuff like that. I wasn't really into guitar-based music. I don't really know much about it, but I started learning the guitar to join this other band that did. I think we did
you played like Michael Jackson.
Yeah, like a Michael Jackson cover song or something like that.
Stuff like that.
It was I can't remember which song it was.
Beat it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and
Is that any?
but anyway, his band was like his band and his whole crowd was like the cool, like they were like the cool kids. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like I mean, at that point, like Nirvana was big and everything, right? So like being grungy and like long haired and all weird like that was like cool, and those guys were like that. So I went to like one of their gigs, and there's like girls there and everything, you know, and the girls were digging it, and, like, and they seemed to be just very popular dudes, you know. So I thought I might have to learn some indie.
And were you, Dom, was it a cool little band you were in when you said, well, let's get this Matt guy in, apparently he's good? Were they like, what, the Michael Jackson dude? You want to get him in?
It was a bit awkward because, like, the first rehearsal, I think he turned up in like one of those shell suits, like flat top.
This was like right at the peak of grunge. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I was completely.
You were right there.
Yeah, and I think the other guys were like, "Who the fuck's this guy?" But then, you know, played the guitar well and understood music. We're like, "Oh right, okay, so that's probably a bit more."
Dom
important.
actually taught me the guitar. I mean, the first kind of guitar I learned was like just basic stuff, but he taught me all the chords for like Ned's Atomic Dustbin songs and
Right,
like
wow.
Mega City 4, Wedding Present.
Sure.
Those are the covers they were doing, and he actually showed me those first few chords that I learned actually, but I picked it up real quick.
Did you? So Dominic, you played. You played guitar and drums.
And the drums mostly. I play a bit of guitar. Actually, Matt just gave me a nice guitar for my birthday last year, which I received yesterday.
Yeah, a bit
Oh.
belated.
I put a picture on Instagram, and it's because Matt designs his own guitars, like Manson guitars. It's like, you know, a
Right.
brand of guitars. It's a thing that he does, and he's made me the first ever left-handed
Wow.
guitar.
I called someone in a factory and said,
He
"Do
just
this."
made it cool.
Don't ruin the moment. Don't ruin the beautiful moment.
But it was the first left-handed
the
one
first
ever
one
made.
ever.
So yeah, he's a lefty.
No, have
And
you
I
played-
got
have you-
that yesterday, so
Yesterday.
I was tinkering around on that last night.
Is it any good?
It's pretty good, yeah.
You
I
had
didn't
a
plug it
sustainer
in.
working.
No, I didn't plug it in. I was just playing on the couch. But yes. So yeah, I do a bit of that as well.
So when you were learning, so because obviously, are you self-taught? Did you have lessons?
Yeah, I'm self-taught up until the age that I got together
Yeah.
with him. So at that point, I just taught myself piano a little bit, and I taught myself guitar. When I was younger, my parents gave me lessons in the clarinet, and I did that to grade 3, then gave up. I didn't like it.
Right.
I tried to take violin lessons, didn't like it. I had one piano lesson and gave up, didn't like it. But then when we were doing A levels, actually, I was doing an A level in music, and with that, you got free lessons in any instrument you wanted to. So I actually took lessons in classical guitar when I was like, say, 17, 18, and that was the only time I really took lessons. Yeah.
So you all get into the band. So this is your band, and then Matt comes into your band.
Yeah.
How do we get from your band to Muse?
Well, yeah, you probably joined our band for a year or 2 years or something like that, and we were just doing covers, and it just reached that point where, you know, we were like 14, 15 years old or something like that, and we just had an interest, because we were doing like GCSE music, so we just had an
They all
interest
started
in
getting
actually...
into skateboarding, that's what happened.
And you didn't like skateboarding?
Yeah, no, there was a bit of a disruption going on because I was...
He'd gone from the shell suits.
Yeah, I'd gone from a shell suit and I suddenly converted into one of them, and then I was like, you know, I sort of infiltrated and basically started to sort of try and take over a little bit. But I had the best interests. You know, I wanted to write songs, not do cover songs, basically. And I wasn't the singer, and we had a singer, and I'd go around his house and stuff, and I'd say, look, let's do a song together. He just wasn't interested. He just wanted to play computer games and stuff like that. And I think we might have fallen out a little bit. I can't remember exactly what happened, but for some reason I fell out with a bunch of people. I kind of fell out with a bunch of people.
Really,
and that coincided with them all sort of getting really into computer games and getting really into skateboarding. You know,
Right.
We're talking about 15-year-olds here.
Sure,
right?
I'm with you.
And they started building a skate ramp. It became like a big project that everyone was like, you know, the cool kids are now building a skate ramp, and it's like cool, and like, everyone hangs out there and drinks alcohol and smokes things and stuff. And I was like, what's music? What's happened to music? And it was like, I kind of felt like the weight of the gang was moving away, and I was like the only one left going like, come on. And he was bang up for it though. He was definitely up for it. And I kind of fell out with pretty much everyone apart from you, didn't I? Yeah, that was it. Because you were tuned in. You liked the idea of doing music. Yeah.
I loved music, yeah. So we started working on like original songs. And everyone else lost interest, and then we were like, okay, so it's just the two of us actually for a while, and we did some like really early.
Yeah, we were like the
recordings.
White Stripes for about a year. When we first started, it was just me and him. I was just doing riffs and singing, and he was on the drums. And we
then
couldn't find anyone to play bass in our year in school. Like,
Right.
the year that we were in, there was no one that really played the bass. Yeah.
And then we found Chris, the bass player now, and he was playing the drums in a different band, but we could just see that he
Never played the bass when he joined us.
Yeah, I read that, and I've read that with a few about a few of the band members of other bands, and so he was a drummer who never played bass. And the story goes, you went, learn to play bass and you can be in the band.
Basically.
And I just assumed that wasn't true.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did know he could play the guitar though.
Yeah, he played a bit of
but,
guitar.
but in a band he just played drums, but we could just tell that he had like real musical talent. You know what I mean, like and you know he had it too, and so we sort of thought, well, he's the best other musician person in this school, so let's just get him in and get him on the bass. Yeah.
So now it's the three of you. So you'd be what age? 16?
15, 16 was when I guess the three of us were.
Right.
Chris was 15 and maybe.
No, he was 15. Yeah.
You were 15 as well.
Oh, I guess I was.
I was 16.
And can you remember what you thought at that time? I know this is you may or may not, but can you remember thinking, "We're fucking good. We got this. We're good." Did that?
Well, it became a difficult time, I'd say, because we went from, you know, playing all these cover songs, and there's this, like, you know, the indie music scene in England was healthy at that point, you know, and then you had this American sort of grunge scene that was happening simultaneous. So it kind of felt like, I don't know, like when we started, that seemed, with our group of friends anyway, it seemed to sort of peter out a little bit. And so whereas we were going from like playing gigs to like say 50 mates, you know, in like we'd rent out a little sports club or something. And it would all be like going off. Do you know what I mean, like people getting drunk for the first time? I remember an ambulance turned up at one of the gigs. Remember, someone got really. I mean, that's when you know the party's really really happening, you know. But anyway, it's the point was that when we started doing our own songs, obviously, then obviously all that disappeared, you know. So then it became doing gigs to no one, or like 2 people, you know, all that kind of thing. So it was that was where the grind began, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Because I'm always really interested in hearing about the beginnings of bands, and because as we're all getting, cause you turned 40 on your last birthday.
December, yeah.
And Matt, this
coming
is
soon.
staring you right in the face. Yeah. How were you with that? I did that a few years ago. How were you with it?
Totally, I was fine. Just felt.
You're
I
not
wasn't that. I
convincing
was
me.
more. I was kind of like, I had a party around my place, so
Right.
that was kind of like, that was freaking me out, like trying to get that organised.
Okay.
But the actual turning 40, it looked a bit weird on the birthday card when
That's
I got, you know, as soon as you see it,
exactly
you're
what I
like,
had.
oh god. But you know how I actually feel, I feel the same.
It's bizarre.
Just make more noises when I stand up and sit down.
You've got this to come, my young little friend.
Very excited.
I remember it was I did the same thing. I had a house in Wales for a weekend. We all went and had a nice time, and then it was a few days later. I was sitting at home on my own, single, in my living room, and I looked at all the birthday cards on the mantelpiece. There's about 8, and they all had 40 on, and I stared at them for about 5 minutes, going, I see what it says, but it can't be possible that I'm 40 years old.
Well, if you look at life expectancy, you know, compared to our parents' generation, our grandparents, it's like about 10 years gets added on, doesn't it, every generation?
Yeah.
So based on that, 40s is the new 30s. And that's that's scientifically true.
I hope so. To be fair, I was morbidly obese for a long time. The fact I got to 40 is quite a miracle. How did you get, and talk me through, because I like watching people tell me these stories and watching them remembering. Talk to me about getting signed. You don't have to, Dominic, if it's a chore. You literally look like I'm just to wash my dad in the bath.
It's so bloody long ago. I'm just trying to remember.
But this is huge. It's like when you're a garage band, as in a garage, not playing garage do. You may have been in your shell suit, I don't know. And then you actually sign a record deal because you're as a kid, you want this, like you really want it, and then you sign a record deal, and I go, "What was that like?" And you went.
It was
magic. It was exciting. It was amazing.
Well, we had a few.
Well, it started. Look, we've got to give Dennis a shout out. Dennis did great.
Yeah.
Dennis owned a studio called Sawmills down in Cornwall, where Oasis did their first album there. So down in that part of neck of the woods, you know, Devon and Cornwall, like that was a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, so definitely maybe was maybe there, and also Supergrass made an album there, and that was right as we were sort of making our first recordings. He invited us to go and use that studio during downtime, and we made a couple of EPs there, and he actually just funded it.
Right.
He funded us printing out 1,000 CDs, and we basically started selling them locally. But they sold out really quick in just this one record shop in Exeter, because obviously we had a little bit of at this point we had a bit of a following there. And for some reason, like we sold like 285 copies or something, or like 400 copies or whatever it was, and we somehow got in a chart. You know, back in those days there was like an indie chart or something in the NME or something, and we appeared at like number 4 in the indie charts, and we were like, what's going on? How is it possible? And out of that, basically. some Americans caught wind, and a guy called Guy Siri who Madonna brought in to run her label Maverick. Him, and then also this other label, was it Columbia?
I think Columbia.
Tedesco, wasn't it? Michael Tedesco.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had a couple of trips to the
for
States.
some reason,
around
a
that
bit of heat came from over the state, and they flew us over to do like showcase shows. We did that thing called CMJ in New York, and then as we were there, actually, sorry, that was when we heard about Guy Siri. He took us over to LA, and we did a like a rehearsal room. Really, it wasn't a gig. It was like a rehearsal room. And it was just him, his lawyer, and
Steve Jones
from
the
Sex Pistols. Yeah. yeah. They were the only 3 people that we played to, and so we played them like our EP's worth of songs, and he just came on stage and went, "I love you guys, signing a deal right here," and so we started. The first deal we signed was in America, and it was just for America, and that was actually, turns out that was a absolute like blessing in disguise, because we ended up getting dropped from that label on the next album, because they didn't like it. So luckily, because we only got signed there, we ended up doing all these little indie deals around, with different sort of one in France, one in Germany, and all sorts, and
so we got signed quite a few times during that. We signed about 7 record deals over that year. But the first one was definitely surreal, innit? Like, suddenly it's our first time in LA in December. It was sunny and hot.
How old were you at this point?
20, something like that.
20-ish, yeah.
Young, really. Thinking about it, getting signed at that age seems young, and and it was so surreal and weird. Like,
we missed out the funny one though about where we thought we got signed, but we didn't. We came. What was he called? It's so awkward. Is he at Warner's now? It's a really awkward one, right? Because this guy turned us down, and then like 20 years later, he turns up and he's like head of the label, and we had to go. We walked into the office and went, "Oh, it's you!" Like, yeah, it was amazing.
And you did remind him,
of course, yeah. He was like white when he saw us, but basically about 2 years before this, even when we were about 18 or something, 19, we got invited by Parlophone Records to come to London and play a couple of tunes, and we came in, played for these guys, and and we basically went back to our mate. Our friend was in university in Brighton. We went there with we bought like loads of vodka and got pissed up. And I remember like rolling around the campus, literally walking around the campus at the middle of the night in Brighton University, like going, "Yeah, we're signed. We're gonna make it massive." Do you know what I mean? And we never heard a thing. It was just like dead for like a year, and like that took a while to sort of recover from, because like 6 months later or a year later, we're like, maybe we're shit. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was the first time I really thought there was a possibility that we were shit. Yeah.
Because it doesn't, I don't know. Obviously, people would still get signed these days, but it's totally different now.
Yeah, completely different.
Even in that little, that 20 years which has gone like that, the whole thing is different. And also as well, so many people want to be in a band, and so many people want to get signed, and the dream of playing stadiums and whatnot, and it doesn't happen, really. But you did, and you are.
Yeah.
And it is quite Teignmouth.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's not the rock and roll capital of the world.
Definitely not. No.
You picked a drummer and told him to learn the bass. It shouldn't work, really.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what I wanted to ask you. We talked about this on the radio this morning. Are you bothered? Does it bother you? Does it frustrate you? Are you very nonplussed about it when you work on a track or an album, and the design of an album and what the album is based about, or just down to one particular track with the lyrics and the idea about it? Are you bothered at all? Are you frustrated? Are you nonplussed about it when someone, let's say like me, really likes a track, but doesn't really understand what it's about?
No, not at all. I think like
that's most people, isn't it?
I feel like making sense of songs. I kind of feel like that's like a new thing that you have to talk about a lot in interviews and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Like I remember like growing up listening to Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins. I don't know what any of those songs are about. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what they're literally don't know what they're talking singing about. Just weird, jaded stuff or something. That's what it seemed like.
So I shouldn't feel embarrassed that I don't know what some of your songs are about.
No,
I'm allowed to just.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I do.
It.
There's definitely a few I don't. I've got no idea either.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So, Plug In Baby, obviously, which is a great track.
That was an Argos magazine, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
Have you ever sung Glade Plug In Baby just for the crack?
Glade plug.
Yeah, Glade. They were plug-in air fresheners by Glade, and they were called Glade plugins.
I think that's where we got the name from. I wasn't joking when I said Argos, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because in the early days, right, when we first started,
I've always done that joke.
Muscle Museum, like we just didn't know what to call the song, so we just looked up Muse in the dictionary, and it was the word. I had a small, like one of those compact dictionaries, and the word that was before Muse was muscle, and the word that was after it was museum. That's where that title came from. It was like random, completely random. It's got no meaning whatsoever. But actually, no, it's extremely deep. It's extremely deep and meaningful.
I always thought you were really intelligent.
I sort of learned how to pretend to be as time went on. But Plug-in Baby was it was an Argos catalogue. We were flicking through an Argos catalogue in your room, weren't we? When we were about, and you flicked through and we said, "What's this Plug-in Baby?" It must have been a Glade thing or something. And it just sounded cool. It just sounded like a good name for a song.
Oh, I'm learning so much. This is great. Origins of Symmetry, number 3.
Yeah.
In the UK album chart.
Oh yeah,
Wow, yeah, that was-
It got to number 3. This was a massive thing.
It was the first time we got a really good review as well. Enemy gave us like 9 out of 10. It was like an amazing review.
Wow.
And I always remember to this day because it was the first time we ever got a good review. You know what I mean? It's like, the first album got panned and everything. All the EPs we put out were slagged off. Everyone hated everything basically on the first album. But then that album came out. I was like 9 out of 10. The Enemy is like, this is it. And it's like I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I was more happy about that than anything else, I think.
Origins of Symmetry took a few years to get released in America. Is that right?
No, Origin didn't get released. Yeah.
Never came out.
Never did.
That's when we got dropped from
They dropped
Maverick.
us because they didn't like that album. Yeah.
Which is mad, isn't it?
Yeah, because at that point
Yeah.
in America though, it was like Limp Bizkit and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Korn. So rock was kind of had been taken over by this kind of like heavy metal thing, new metal, whatever you call it. Yeah. And so I guess at that point, we were like done over there. Do you know what I mean?
Next album is Absolution. It goes to number 1 in the album chart in the UK. Now, what I love about your career is almost it's like the old fashioned bands where they slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger rather than a massive explosion and then kind of level it out a bit. So your first set of EPs gets a bit of attention and the album and everything, and then you get a number 3 album, and then you get dropped in America, whatever, and then it goes to number 1. You've got a number 1 album.
Yeah.
More people bought your album that week than any other album in the UK. Are you like, wow, we've made it? We're like a successful, famous band, or did anything? Are you bothered by stuff like that, especially back then?
Yeah, I guess at that point, in terms of like record sales and like chart positions and stuff, I think at that point we were touring so heavy that we sort of mapped our sort of trajectory, if you like, through live shows. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I remember Absolution being like the first time we ever did an arena, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the London Arena.
Right.
And so we did this whole tour around the UK and ended with London Arena. And in my mind, I was like, it's almost like, are we worthy of this? Like, can we get there? It wasn't until like really I sort of did a show like that and felt like we were, that we could pull it off, that you could start to sort of own having a number 1 album and sort of think like, oh, actually we deserved it. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like for me, it's like the live thing is like where if we do well there, that's when I'm gonna really believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you get a phone call saying your album's number 1? People always talk about getting the phone call. Is that phone call an actual thing, or can you even remember?
Must have.
It's a bit of a blur.
So yeah, it's a bit blurry back then, but yeah, must have. I'm pretty sure we just would have been like blown away and over the moon. We've always had like.
I can't say. I'm sure I must have been delighted and over the moon, and I remember. And I'm sure I must have gone. This is everything we've worked hard to achieve, but I don't remember, Chris.
What I remember about that album though is that was kind of like the first album for us in the US, right? So at that point we were like playing big venues, like I wouldn't say arenas everywhere, but we did like a couple of our arenas for the first time.
Yeah.
And we were doing like big theaters and stuff like that, and like selling out and all that stuff, and it was all like hyped up across Europe, and that was amazing. But I remember going to the US and literally playing to like 100 people again.
Right.
And we did like a heavy tour for like 2 months on that album, where we were just playing to like 100 people every night, unsold out small clubs, and it was kind of amazing actually, so I love that. So that album has a duality to it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
is that exciting or frustrating when you are playing the London Arena here?
Yeah.
With the number 1 album, and then in America you're playing
it was kind of exciting.
200 capacity tiny little venue.
Yeah, it was kind of exciting because we were at that point we were like partying all the time and like really socializing with the fans and stuff and having a good time all the time. We're trying to. The first album was miserable in terms of touring life, but then the second album the second album really took off, you know.
Right.
And it was at that point where we're playing theatres and stuff, so we would have parties with the fans and like hang around and like we didn't feel famous in any way. Do you know what I mean? Like we were just like cool, we were just like having fun. But then when Absolution came out, that did change. It was the first time we felt we needed like security or something, you know. It was the first time that you couldn't just open the door and let people come backstage and just hang out, you know.
You couldn't announce on stage where you were staying. That
Yeah,
night,
yeah,
pop
exactly.
into
Yeah,
my
yeah.
room.
Yeah, it suddenly became like, oh, like there's a barrier between us and the audience now, you know.
Okay.
And that was noticeable from that album onwards. That, you know, suddenly the backstage was kind of dead, pretty much, you know, after the shows. If we ever did bring people back, it was just too much. It was just like a signing session. It was just uncomfortable, you know. So we lost the ability to really sort of socialise with our fans, if you know what I mean, which we really enjoyed, not being that big, if you know what I mean, from the previous album. But that's what I really loved about the US tours, because we could actually just go and party our tits off over there. It's like we had a great time.
Black Holes and Revelations, Nights of Sidonia, great track. How does a track like that come about? Because it's so epic and ridiculous and anthemic and all over the place. It's a little bit Bohemian Rhapsody in the sense that it seems to be lots of songs in one. Who comes up with that idea? How do you get that idea across? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question, really, because it's been a long time since I thought about that one. I guess partly, you know, a Tex-Mex thing, obviously, and partly my dad's band, the Tornadoes, you know.
Right.
A little bit of that. So I was looking to do something that was a bit more instrumental at first. I wasn't necessarily thinking it would have a big, you know, vocal element at the end or anything. I just liked the idea of doing a track that just had a lead guitar part as the vocal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, just because at that point, I kind of felt like the sort of more prog side of the band, if you know what I mean. Like, because what we didn't talk about is before we made our first album, we actually had a lot of stuff that was a lot more instrumental. So anyway, I was trying to sort of reconnect with that a little bit. And I guess I was thinking of things like groups like the Shadows.
Right.
I was coming from that angle originally, like, you know, sort of like the idea of this sort of cool guitar lead part. It isn't like a flashy guitar part. It's just like a nice, cool melodic guitar part. And then it just spanned from there. And then I started watching, reminding myself of a few Clint Eastwood movies, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I can't remember the name of the other one. What's the other one? A couple of them. Anyway, Ennio Morricone is the composer for the music for those films, Italian dude, and there's something about that I was trying to get into the feel as well. And so originally it was very retro. It was a very retro tune. You know, it sounded like something from the 50s, a mixture of my dad's band, Dick Dale, Shadows, and Ennio Morricone. And then so it was like that. But when we started producing the track, the retroness of it didn't seem to fit with the rest of the album and what we were doing at that point. So we just tried to work out how can we make this sound a bit more contemporary. So instead of playing like this kind of retro, like tremolo, like boom, 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 you can imagine how that would have sounded originally. It was like the Shadows, basically. And we actually just made it a lot more heavy, and I stuck it through the most obscene, ridiculous distortion pedal I had, called a Fuzz Factory, and it just like, and I started doing this crazy tremolo thing. So it almost went a bit comedy at that point. And because of that guitar, that guitar then sent us on this whole other direction of like, this is quite a sort of flamboyant sort of, you know, prog tune or whatever. And then the ending vocal part, I think, might have been part of another tune that we sort of stuck on the end of that, basically.
That's really interesting.
Is that what you wanted to?
No, well, yeah. Well, I didn't know what the answer would be, but it's really interesting because it's such a track. It's everything. But now you say that there is that,
if you heard it played without that just crazy distorted guitar, if it's like boom, 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 you know, it just sounds like a Shadows tune.
When you do that, you sound like my dad trying to ask me what a song is that he's heard on the radio. It goes boom, 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 boom. You must know it. You play it all the time. What's that? Boom, boom, boom. You wrote it. Boom, boom. Rick Rubin and Muse. Discuss.
Well, yeah, we bumped into him over the years here and there. I made a comment once about him that, and I think it got misconstrued. I didn't mean it in the way that got interpreted, but I could have used better words, I admit. He's known as being the sort of the producer that kind of like gives. We never worked with him, but we've worked with people that work for him. You know, so we've heard things about how the way he works, and we just heard rumours that he's very sort of hands off, but in a good way. You know, in other words, he sort of like will come in and give ideas and he'll disappear. And I think I made a comment once saying. something like, "Oh, thanks for Rick teaching us how to not produce." And I could have used better words. What I meant to say was, because we produced our own album, we won an award for a Producers Guild for producing an album. What I meant to say is like we did the same thing. Like we were hands off,
Right?
But it just came out wrong, basically.
So it was a compliment, which came across as a real.
It was meant to be a
compliment.
It was meant to be a
Real dig,
self-deprecating thing, but it just came across as who's the cunt? You mean? Yeah. Yeah. That often happens to me, by the way. So, yeah.
Your album, The Second Law, was that recorded here at Air?
Second Law was
Yeah,
done
mostly,
partly here.
yeah.
Absolution was done pretty much all here.
Oh, really?
Black Holes, Bits and Pieces, and Second Law. Yeah,
Most of it was here.
Quite
We
a lot
did
of Second Law was
bit in
done
LA
here. Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Most of it was here.
The Second Law only got to number 9 in Croatia.
Oh yeah, I did do it here. Yeah, I sang Madness right there. I stood there.
What did he sing there?
Madness. I was stood right there.
Look at that.
Yeah. I did the lead vocals here, so I had a microphone set up here because we were self-producing the album. I had a microphone set up right there, literally right there, and I had the screen here so that I could record the vocals on my own, basically. Yeah.
And is your manager at that point looking at that massive empty studio going, why are we even here if you're just going to record it there?
Exactly.
Do it in the kitchen. The Second Law only got to number 9 in Croatia. What went wrong?
Well, that was our experimental album, wasn't it? Really, that was that we deliberately set out to make an album where every song was a radical departure from everything we'd done before in one way or another.
I don't think they're ready for it.
Yeah, they weren't quite ready. Yeah,
That may well be our best chart position in Croatia, though. So,
Oh, really?
so it's an achievement, actually.
Drones, great album. You worked with. Now, do you say Mutt Lang?
Yeah.
Is that how you
Yeah,
do? You
Mutt
call
Lang,
him
yeah.
Mutt?
Mutt. Yeah.
Mutt.
Like this legendary guy
Yeah.
who has worked with like the spectrum from AC/DC to Lady Gaga and everybody in between. Is he good to work with?
Yeah. He's good because he's very old school. Very.
Why are you laughing?
Well, no, because he's got a difficult side as well, which everyone knows who's worked with him, right? He's very obsessive, very perfectionist, and
Right.
we are too. So it works in that way. What's great about him is his understanding of actual musicianship and playing. There's not many producers in this modern age. The younger generation of producers who really care that much about the detail of a person's playing, like how they're playing the guitar and how they're playing the bass, because these days everyone just fixes everything in a computer, and all they use samples, So it was refreshing to work with someone that really didn't want to sort of use any of that sort of modern tech, if you know what I mean, and just sort of make us actually play well, So that was really refreshing. And but he has trouble letting go sometimes of stuff,
See, the opposite to Rick Rubin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's so involved, and but yeah, it was really good to work with him. Though.
What did you say? I'm not used to taking comments from an instrumentalist.
Oh yeah, that was it. That was a good one. Yeah.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, oh yeah, but he's got he's got the ego, but he's earned it. Do you know what I mean? Like he's got the right to.
Do you know Mutt Lang wrote and produced Ipswich Town's FA Cup single "Ipswich Get That Goal"? Do you know that?
He's penned a lot of hits. What can I say? Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. New song.
Yeah.
You have a new
We
song.
have a new
Yes,
one.
we do, yeah.
Yeah, it's called Thought Contagion. Yeah, and it's going to be on an album, but we haven't made the album yet. We're sort of halfway through. So this is actually the second song that we completed. Dig Down we did last year. This one, there's about a bunch of other songs that we've got in the works. And but yeah, it's this album is going to be that we're working on is when we did the Second Law, we took this approach of every song had to be a radical departure from the band, and it was very experimental for that reason. This album's going to be experimental, but I think we're trying to make all the songs really solidly great in terms of like, they're going to be relatively traditional song structures. They're not going to be like crazy, radical experiments. You know what I mean? But the genre of each song is going to be almost completely different. So across the album, you're going to hear like. It's going to be the most diverse album I think we've ever done in terms of like, you're going to have like a heavy rock tune on there, then like some like urban sounding stuff or some pure electronic stuff, But as I said, we're going to sort of stick to the song structure, for each one of those, rather than sort of just lose our minds and go off on sort of like 5-minute journeys of. So we sort of challenged ourselves to just make like say 10 or 12 great songs, and slim down a little bit on some of the more progressive leanings that we have. But anyway, Thought Contagion is. Yeah, it's like one of the more rocky tunes that we're working on, and we've already finished it, haven't we? It's already out.
It's already been released. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
came out
working on
today,
it. It's hard to let go. It's hard to finish those tracks.
Do you know what you're going to call the album?
No, there's a couple. I'd want to get a few more tunes done first. I've got a few ideas, but I'd rather get a few more tunes done and then see if it fits. Yeah.
Who'll decide? Why don't you let Dominic pick?
I'll give you a few options and you can decide.
No, don't. Just let him go. Just do it. You're really successful. Do it. Just let him go. Do it now. Name it now. Do it. Call it. Go.
I don't want to ruin it for everyone.
That's it. That is the album. I don't want to ruin it for everyone. Will be the next album from Muse.
That's a good album.
It's actually not bad.
I don't want to ruin it for everyone. Yeah.
Tell us about the new album. I don't want to ruin it for everyone. Where did you get that name from? Oh, it's a funny story,
Dom's
actually. Is it true that, Matt, you once had 2 cats called Kim and Kanye?
I still have them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they're still with me. I moved them to LA. Yeah, they live in LA now. And Kim keeps wandering off. She keeps disappearing. I think there's some...
Do the other cats understand their British accents?
I think Kim's very popular with the locals. I mean, the local
Right.
boys, yeah. The tomcats are all over her, I think. She keeps wandering off, and Kanye's just like hanging around the house, just like going, like, where's my piece gone? And like, and he's totally jaded. And I feel bad for him,
I thought
actually.
they were brother and sister.
And that's where we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Cool, thanks.
I hope you've
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. This
Yeah,
has been
cheers.
good.
Yes, thank you.
Good luck with the new album. Great
you.
title, by the way. I love it. Good night, everybody.
Radio X.